Hello, and welcome to the first in a series of videos about Marvel movies, a niche that is obviously very lacking in modern media discourse. Now, I pride myself on being into movies, and also on being what is often called a Marvel shill. Because while I do like movies in general, I do also happen to have an appreciation for this niche little indie series you might have heard of called the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Obviously those movies are not perfect and it would be hazard to call them all works of art, but I do feel like they are a tad overhated in today's modern media landscape. However, the MCU is not the only chapter of Marvel movies in popular culture. Upon talking to my friend and fellow YouTuber Pillar of Garbage and spending time in his Discord community, I realized just how lacking my experience actually is. Out of the wealth of Marvel-related movies that are not a part of the MCU, I have seen shockingly little. In fact, the only non-MCU Marvel movies that I've seen have been the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, the Venom movies, and Morbius. So that list kind of speaks for itself, honestly. After I came to this horrific realization, I decided that I wanted to change this. I want to start a new series that will eventually lead up to a giant video about all the Fox X-Men movies, but in the meantime I have an entire treasure trove of one-offs, duologies, and trilogies for me to make smaller videos on. And as you can see, I decided to start things off with a video about the trilogy of movies surrounding Marvel's first family, the Fantastic Four. When talking about actually theatrically released live-action movies, so not this one, there are three movies surrounding this team. There is the original movie released in 2005, its sequel, Rise of the Silver Surfer, released in 2007, and the 2015 reboot, often referred to as Fanforstic. We'll get to why later. And these three form what I like to think of as an unofficial trilogy, a trilogy that I watched in its entirety for the first time for this video. With the coming MCU reboot and rumors of cast members from these movies showing up in future Marvel projects, now seems like a better time than ever to re-examine these movies. And as they say in showbiz, let's start from the top. So here we are, at the beginning. Genius scientist Reed Richards and his best friend Ben Grimm have a plan to harness the power of a cloud of cosmic radiation heading over Earth, but they need the help of their rich acquaintance, Dr. Victor Von Doom, who of course they trust without question because his name is Victor Von Doom. Who wouldn't trust a guy with a name like that? I mean, obviously. Anyway, Reed and Ben need access to Doom's space station so that they can observe the cosmic rays and learn how to cure cancer or something. It's not really clear. Doom agrees, and on their mission, Reed and Ben are not only joined by Doom, but also by his fiancée Sue Storm, who Reed has history with, as well as Sue's brother Johnny, a thrill-seeking pilot played by Chris M.F. Evans. Anyway, the five all end up on the station, some things go wrong, and not only do Sue and Doom kinda sorta definitely break up, but the five are also all exposed to the rays of cosmic radiation, giving them all superpowers. The movie follows Reed, Sue, Ben, and Johnny all learning to use these powers to fight crime while also trying to cure said powers. Meanwhile, Doom uses his powers for, world domination and all that. I do not hate this movie. In fact, I actually kind of enjoyed it. It is nowhere near perfect, and trust me, we will get there in a second, but it really is an enjoyable little popcorn flick. I do think that the best part of this movie is the performances of the actors playing the team members, particularly Ben and Johnny. Johnny is just a blast to watch on screen. He embodies this douchey charm that Chris Evans would take to the next level in his performance in Knives Out, and you know how I feel about Knives Out. And everything about Ben was just great. His whole struggle with how his new appearance affects his life is awesome, showing how it affects him in big ways, like causing his wife / fiance, it's not really clear, to leave him, and in small ways, like magically making two of his fingers disappear.
Where are your ears?
He has a genuine struggle that the others really don't, and you can see that this whole thing is genuinely pretty painful for him, until the end of the movie where he's totally fine with it now. I guess punching evil scientists in the face is pretty therapeutic. The new girlfriend who actually appreciates him also probably helped. Something else that I liked about this movie was that there are parts that were actually dedicated to the four helping people. A lot of superhero movies nowadays are kind of just about the hero versus the villain, or heroes versus mindless army of CGI monstrosities, and less so about superheroes saving civilians from danger. It's the kind of stuff that warps our perception of heroism, and it makes people think that a Superman who kills people is more interesting than one who doesn't. So I appreciated that in this movie. It's a trend that I'm sure will continue throughout all of the movies we talk about today. Overall though, the movie is pretty messy. The plot is kind of sporadic, jumping in and out of the main story whenever it feels like it. While I liked the performances, the characters themselves were not that likable, particularly Reed and Johnny, which really made it harder to root for them. A lot of the humor really fell flat for me and was weirdly misogynistic at times.
You should be able to bend light around other objects, even people, if you could control your emotional state better.
Excuse me?
And that's not even talking about the multiple times this movie forced Sue to strip naked in order to effectively use her invisibility powers. And the fact that Jessica Alba was pretty much whitewashed into Jessica Albertson, and Ben was pretty divorced from his very Jewish roots, all on top of Doom himself actually being whitewashed. Speaking of Doom, man was he the weak link in this movie. To begin with, his whole plotline, businessman in hot water with corporate investors, gets powers in a program made by the same people who gave the heroes powers, loses his share of the company, using his powers to take revenge on the corporate heads who pushed him out, donning a mask, and getting into a personal fight with the hero only to seemingly die by their own weapon, is pretty much ripped beat for beat from the Green Goblin in Sam Raimi's first Spider-Man movie. However, this Doom lacks what that Goblin had in spades, which was charisma. Which is kind of disheartening because in the comics, Doom is this ridiculous scenery-chewing narcissist that is so much fun to read, and it would have been incredible to see that portrayed on screen. But here he's just a vaguely intimidating businessman with a mask and a hood.
Lightning bolts shoot from my fingertips!
Shiver me timbers, Batman. But like, this movie isn't terrible or anything, it's just okay. There are some parts I really liked, there are some parts I really didn't. All for it to even out to a pretty solid just... I would recommend it if you're not expecting a super great adaptation of the Fantastic Four, but if you want a good movie to kill like an hour and 45 minutes of spare time. And honestly, it is kind of a shame that this movie is just okay, because this is as good as it gets from here on out. Oh hey, it's Stan Lee. Okay. Now I will give this movie credit. It was not as bad as I was expecting it to be.
I think there's no way we're wearing that, Johnny.
What do you have against capitalism?
It's not great though. The basic premise of this movie is that the Fantastic Four are now established heroes doing their hero thing, with Reed and Sue about to get married when some mysterious things keep happening. There's some quite bizarre weather patterns that happen, which if we're being real could probably be explained by climate change if it wasn't for the instant water freezing thing. Then suddenly the Silver Surfer shows up, an intergalactic flying guy with a pretty self-explanatory name. And if you're at all familiar with the comics, then you know what a visit from the Silver Surfer means. He's a sign of the approach of Galactus, the devourer of worlds. Again, a pretty self-explanatory name. And so the Fantastic Four must uncover the truth and figure out a way to stop Galactus from eating their world. I wonder if they'll succeed. Now this movie is not as good as the last one, but I will be fair and give my thoughts on what I did like. The one place I do think they really improved was in the likability of the four main heroes themselves. They have a much more believably friendly dynamic, and in general they're a lot easier to watch on screen and root for. The movie also continues the trend of having the team actually saving people and not just fighting evil villains. It continues to be frustratingly refreshing. And while the whole power swapping subplot could be very hit or miss at times, the times that it hit, I really did enjoy what they did with it. I thought they played around with it in fun ways. Other than that though, this was a significantly diminished experience. The Reed and Sue stuff was pretty cute until they forced in some conflict like the bachelor party and stuff, and that got resolved really easily, and then it just keeps going back and forth. It's not fun to watch. Ben feels like he's been dumbed down significantly, and the plot in general is just a lot more confused. Not confusing, but confused. It feels pulled apart in so many different directions, even more than the last one. Not unlike the titular Mr. Fantastic himself is pulled apart in many ways, constantly. Though the main difference here being that Mr. Fantastic can take the stress, and the script of this movie really can't. The antagonists were also a significant downgrade. Doom's back again, insert Eminem joke, and somehow he's even more underwhelming than the last movie. They got the guy who played Chief Holt in Brooklyn Nine-Nine to be a general character, who is pretty much every US general stand-in character you've ever seen in any movie ever. The most memorable thing that happens with him is him getting completely obliterated by Doom and his powers. The Silver Surfer's like the only moderately okay villain, and even then, he's not really a villain. In fact, by the end of the movie, he's a full-on good guy, so. And then of course there is the G-Man, Galactus himself. Or I guess I should say the G-Cloud, because that's all Galactus is in this movie. A giant space cloud that eats planets. Apparently this was done to tone down the silliness, because I guess a flying chrome surfer bro with magical powers who can breathe in the vacuum of space and travel interstellar speeds, fighting against the Fantastic Four, who are varied in their silliness, is totally fine. But the big man who eats planets is just too far. Like, I would have gotten it if they had toned down the outfit, because yeah, look at that thing. But this is just lame. It honestly makes me glad that Silver Surfer flew into his Galactussi and blew him up at the end of the movie. I'm going to hell for saying that. And generally there's just so much other weird stuff in this movie. I said I liked the power swapping plotline, which is true, I did. Until the resolution. The whole give Johnny everyone's power all at once is kind of lame, not to sound too much like an 80s high school bully, and it takes away the in-universe reason for there to be a team in the first place. Thus robbing the Fantastic Four of the four it needs to be fantastic. It also does not help that a consequence of the power-swapping plotline is bringing back the unfortunate trend from the last movie of making Sue naked without her consent. Why do these movies keep doing that? It's so weird. And then there's the whole bit where Sue and Reed are like, welp, I guess our last attempt at a wedding went badly, so you know what our real wedding needs? Cultural appropriation. That will be the perfect touch. God damn it. So yeah, it's not a great movie. Again, not the worst thing ever, but it loses a lot of the charm that the original had, despite maintaining much of the same original problems that the movie had, and then some. It's certainly not for me, but I can definitely see how this movie could be for someone else. I don't know if I can say the same for the next and final movie we'll be talking about today. Oh hey, it's Stan Lee. Alright, let's just get this over with. So yes, in 2015, almost exactly 10 years after the original Fantastic Four movie released, there was a reboot movie, also called Fantastic Four. The name was stylized, however, putting the 4 in the place of the A in the word fantastic, giving it the nickname Fant4stick, which is how I will be referring to it from this point on because it does not deserve the respect of being referred to as a Fantastic Four movie. Honestly, calling it a movie to begin with is a bit of a stretch. There's a reason that my Letterboxd review,
go follow me on Letterboxd, I'm TS Dennis, please, I need more followers,
of this movie calls it the first anti-movie. Allow me to explain. Now, to give this movie credit, it does not start out that bad. It does not start out great or even good, don't get me wrong, but at least the beginning of the movie is recognizably a movie. The opening of the movie shows the origins of a young Reed Richards and Ben Grimm's friendship. We learn how intelligent Reed is, and that apparently Ben's older brother is abusive.
Hey, Plopper inside.
Wait, do you mean to tell me that in this universe, Ben Grimm's signature catchphrase comes from his abusive brother? And not only that, it's a phrase that his older brother used when abusing him? That's a choice. Anyway, we flash forward 7 years to Ben and Reed, who are definitely high schooler guys, we swear. And they get picked up by this guy, who I can't even be bothered to remember his name, but he's Sue and Johnny's dad, so I assume his last name is Storm, so I'm gonna call him Mr. Storm. Anyway, Mr. Storm picks up a couple of high schoolers from their high school and then takes them to his home in New York City so that they can work on a big old teleporting machine, joined by a team of older NASA-grade scientists as well as some other high schoolers, namely Mr. Storm's kids, Johnny and Sue. Reed and Sue in particular get friendly with each other, as the movie so desperately wants you to believe.
So you like music? Is that kind of like your thing?
Pattern recognition.
Pattern recognition?
Music is just a series of altered patterns. The musician creates the pattern and makes us anticipate a resolution, then holds back, makes you wait for it. There's patterns in everything and everyone.
What's mine?
You want to be famous? Your parents, teachers all told you one thing, one way to be, and you ignored them.
And now I'm here.
So you are.
As you can see, the sparks are just flying between the two. This was the first major problem I had with the movie. This scene is not a fluke. All of the other scenes in this movie have the same level of chemistry between characters and natural human intonation, which is to say pretty much none. Even scenes with Michael B. Jordan as Johnny Storm really struggle to have any kind of on-screen presence. And that's with Michael B. Jordan. If he was having trouble, the other actors barely stood any kind of chance. Anyway, also on the team working on this project is Victor Von Doom, who in this movie looks like your average Reddit moderator. They mentioned offhandedly in this movie that Victor has been working on this project for 10 years, which if true, means that he's likely in his late 20s or his 30s. However, he still has a relationship with Sue like in the previous movies, which either means that Sue is Reed's age, in which case a 30-year-old man is with a teenage girl, or that Sue is Victor's age, which means at some point in this movie that a 30-year-old woman is with a 16-year-old boy. Neither scenarios are particularly ideal. I guess the writers forgot that Reed was supposed to be a high schooler too, just like half the audience has at this point, if they believed it at all. Anyway, after successfully sending some equipment and some monkeys to an alternate dimension, did I mention they were trying to go to an alternate dimension? That was like the whole point of their mission. Anyway, they were trying to go to an alternate dimension and they succeeded. Reed, Victor, Johnny, and Ben, who is there for some reason, all decide to go to the alternate dimension to plant a very real and not at all CGI American flag. Some shenanigans ensue, things go wrong, and Sue just so happens to show up to try and bring them back into the real world. Victor falls off a cliff and gets left behind, and then there's an explosion as the other three get back, which, as you may have guessed, gives the four in that room their powers. So you know, the only woman member of the team happens to get her powers because she just so happened to be in the room, instead of volunteering to be on the same mission, like everyone else did, like in all other iterations. Awesome! There's an admittedly effective sequence where we first see the four discovering their powers in an upstate government facility. Effective in the sense that they for some reason decided to go with an insane body horror angle for this movie, especially for Reed, and it is effectively disturbing. Not as disturbing as this weirdly subjective shot of Reed in the vents though. And giving the movie further props, the CGI for Johnny Storm really does kind of look effective in this scene. Hey movie, do you like the praise? Do you like it? Because that's all you're gonna get from me. Thus far, this has been a semi-coherent first act of a movie. The story's about to start and the bulk of the movie is in the future, right? No, not really. In fact, we're actually halfway through the movie already. Trust me, if it seems like almost nothing has happened thus far, you'd be right in assuming that, because it's true. But when you watch this movie, it actually feels like it's been far longer. This movie's pacing is utterly atrocious, seeming like an eternity to the audience while simultaneously not actually having anything happen. And it's about to get so much worse, because right after we see a scene of Reed breaking out of this facility and running away, we are treated to
his combat effect.
What? So you're just gonna skip over the whole power testing and learning phase of this movie? You know, the bulk of most superhero origin story movies? What is the point of this? It literally accomplishes nothing whatsoever. This time skip just does not have moved the plot forward in any way. We don't see any of the character development on screen, which character development I know is a foreign concept apparently to these writers because there's been none of it in the first 45 minutes of this movie, but Jesus Christ, guys. Apparently that year also sapped away the CGI budget because Ben and Johnny, who looked pretty okay before the time skip, now look awful. The magic of filmmaking, everyone. And Ben is naked. Awesome. Now this movie's making me think about the Things thing. After Reed is extracted from hiding and saved from his painfully fake stubble, there's some shoved in drama between the four that's solved fairly quickly. And then we find out that Doom is alive, and he's painful to look at. He looks like the irradiated child of C-3PO in a squished ball of tinfoil. And he shows up when there's literally like 25 minutes left in the movie. Anyway, his whole deal is that he like spent his year in the alternate dimension and got cool new powers and stuff, but he's like angry because people want to go to his home, referring to the alternate dimension, and like colonize it or something. And so he wants to like end the world so that humans can't colonize his home, being the alternate dimension or something. It really does not make any sense, and honestly I was more distracted by his Chad walking. It was so much more entertaining to make that edit and then watch it than it was to watch a single minute of this movie. So now we're at the final battle already, despite there being like no natural progression at all. I promise you, I have not left anything important out. There hasn't been like this whole build-up of the movie that I've been missing. This is just what the movie is like. And somehow we end up in the alternate dimension with a standard big blue beam into the sky that the four have to stop. what is happening right now? Seriously, I'm asking, because not only is the CGI awful and I can barely see what's happening that way, but also it's just so dark. I haven't mentioned this, but this movie is so dark I can barely tell what's happening half the time. I just can't see anything happening going on. Except for Doom. Oh god, his face gets worse every time I look at it. So the four, like, fight him, I guess. They then try to reason with him, but to no avail, appealing to his inner humanity.
Victor, don't do this!
There is no Victor. There is only Doom.
Hold on a minute. This movie is quite bad. So they keep fighting Doom, and then, like, Ben uses his catchphrase lovingly borrowed from his abusive brother.
It's clobbering time!
And then they blow up Doom, and they save the world, and all that shit, and everything is just peachy. Afterwards, the four come to terms with their lives as superheroes. They realize that they just might need a name, but they just can't come up with anything. So they change the subject.
Come a long way since the garage.
Gotta say, it's fantastic.
Say that again?
It's fantastic.
Yes, it is. Guys, I got it.
Oh, fuck off. Thank God Stanley was not in this mess. I do not think his heart could have taken it. Fantastic Four as a franchise has had a fairly rocky road, with the adaptations ranging from "it's okay" to "I'm pretty sure this has taken the place of Artemis Fowl as the worst movie I've ever seen." So there's definitely room for improvement. I know that the MCU can be very hit or miss when it comes to comic book character adaptations, and so there is an understandable amount of skepticism, but after having watched all these movies, honestly there really is no place to go but up. Hopefully we can get an at least consistently good adaptation of these characters. They really deserve it. And I guess that's the end of today's video. Like I have said, I plan on doing more videos like this, talking about these live-action, non-MCU Marvel movies that I've never seen. So if you're interested, like this video to let me know and just, share it to other people to show that you're interested. Leave comments if you want me to look at specific movies, like specific non-Marvel movies, or just to say hi. I always appreciate that. And of course, if you really like this video, I always encourage you to subscribe so that you can see more videos just like this one and help this channel continue to grow. I absolutely loved writing and shooting this video, and I'm proud that this is the video that I end 2022 off with. This has been a really great year for the channel, probably the best it's ever had so far, and I wanted to thank you all sincerely for that, because it was mostly you guys. And I hope to keep the streak going and have an even better year next year. I sincerely wish all of you a happy new year, and I guess I'll see you in 2023. Bye!
Everyone's talking about, oh, you're a new MCU fan, you're an old MCU fan, the show's good, the show's bad. Here's the thing.